are we are live. Lee, how are you this afternoon?
Very good, man. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm awesome. Listen, I'm glad that we could get together. I know that we'll probably have some folks joining us on either Facebook Live or looking in from Zoom. So, and I wanted to just have this quick 15, 20-minute conversation with you.
Sure.
And, you know, here we are, Operators of Leadership Trainers International, which simply works with, for those that may be watching us for the first time, works with trainers all across the country and around the globe, and also leaders that are running companies and leadership groups. And so I just wanted to talk about, obviously, COVID-19. Here we are. We find ourselves in a different situation. And is it kind of weird for you? Let me ask you this, kind of weird for you? You're used to being in front of a room of 100 or 500 people. What's that feel like?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're both a little theatrical in our presentations. And so sitting down and doing a presentation for a half a day or a whole day is just a little, our hand motions have to be really tight.
Right.
Things that we used to be able to be a little bit more flamboyant are not there. And I think that, if we're experiencing it, all the trainers that we train and all the leaders that we train are facing the same situation.
Right. And it's something we've got to work with. We've got to figure this out as quickly as possible. And of course, all of us are figuring it out right now and going to different mediums and environments, whether it's FaceTime or Zoom like this or one of the others, WebEx or a variety of others. You and I were talking, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, you brought up three, I thought, really cool questions about where we are in this environment. I just wanted to bring them up to set the stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And one of the things that you said was, one of the things you ask yourself, whether it's a live class or now a virtual class, is how would I teach this? Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I think, both of us look at outlines, and we know our timing when we're in a classroom environment. But here we have to look at our timing and actually coordinate when we're going to go into those movements that we normally would just do naturally. And I think some of the people that we've done business with agree with us, and they find themselves having to practice more than they did in the past, because the whole idea is when the message gets there, that the message creates a learning experience. And when we're in front of people, we can see that learning experience. But when we're in this environment, sometimes it's hard to get their reactions.
Yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah.
I've had, we've had multiple conversations with some of our star instructors and people that are used to doing this at a high level. And one of the things, or one of the common feedbacks that we're getting is, wow, this virtual communication thing, while these people are unbelievable on stage in live in a live classroom or live environment, they're uncomfortable a little bit with this virtual stuff.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to when we were kids and we would get involved in anything, from sports to theater. You have to practice. And, if you're going to get up there and you don't practice and you don't know how to, do your polls, and you don't know how to bring people in and out of environments, I think you're going to have that awkwardness. And that's what our goal is, to help so many people get past that awkwardness, because that's where I think they don't feel themselves. Once they practice, they're going to feel themselves. They're going to be the same person as they were on stage.
Right. Different, but the same.
Right.
So the second question that we were talking about, and so I thought this is an interesting question for an instructor to be asking himself or herself.
Sure.
But it's valid, and it's how do I learn this? Right.
Absolutely.
Because you're really trying to put yourself in the mind of the learner, the receiver of the information.
Absolutely.
So does that have to change too?
Well, perfect example is you, JC. You are naturally funny. I mean, you're not, it's not that you have to write things in to be funny. You're just naturally funny. And so I try to be like that, but boy, sometimes that really gets awkward. So yeah, you have to get in that mind of that learner, because if I'm sitting on my keister for, 2 or 3 hours and not learning something, it starts to become real frustrating. So I think it's that interchange. And I think sometimes you have to drop out of the Zoom or whatever, and get back with them and see their expressions and ask some questions they're not expecting, so you can bring them back in.
Sure, it's great if we can have personal contact. It's still a relationship-based environment,
Absolutely.
It's our job as trainers to make it a relationship-based environment.
Well, you know what I've always learned from you, JC, is at the beginning of the class, you go out and you speak to the audience. And to us, both of us, and one of my big fears as an instructor is I used to stutter as a child. And so I go out and speak to people so that I feel comfortable about speaking to them as a group. Well, I can't do that here, but so I do the same thing. I go out before the class starts, 10 minutes before, as people are coming in, and I'm online with them making jokes and going back and forth. And I think that is where you have to get over your if there's such an animal, stage fright with this, which I think there is. I think there's some form of stage fright with this technology.
Right. Hey, you know what? I want to just talk about that for a second, because I think you've hit a key point here. So when there's a scheduled program that, say, starts at 9 a.m.,
right?
Are you saying that you have the facilitator, or you as the administrator let them into the room early and you're there early as well?
Absolutely. And that's why I say, JC, when we're in classroom environment, you and I teaching, you and I always get there an hour early. You know, I remember at the National Association of Realtors, one time I saw you speak in front of 3,500 people, and I saw you go to the back of the room and come all the way to the front, and you were saying hello to everybody. And I think that's what helps us as instructors feel, and also as leaders. As leaders, we want to get a pulse for the room, and I think that does that. So yeah, sure. I come in 15, 20 minutes before.
That's a big tip for anybody that's out there that's doing the Zoom, that's new to it, is to get into the room early and say good morning, or how are you, and
just be a person.
Yeah, just have some small talk. That way, by the time the clock ticks 9 a.m., you've already created some relationships, and you've already got some allies in a virtual world.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important, because when they go in those groups, when they poll, they realize that you're trying to create a atmosphere where they can learn.
Right. Right. And the third question that we talked about the other day was...
Hey, wait a second. Before you move forward, I just got to ask something.
Sure.
Next time we do this, do I need to wear a hat? Is that too much shine on my head?
No, there's a little shine there, so you could put a little powder on it, but you don't need to wear a hat.
Next time I'll make sure we put some powder up there.
But that's in a different program we're not going to talk about today.
Oh, okay.
But we do talk about powder and stuff like that. We're going to talk a little bit about the screen presence. But the other thing that we talked about the other day was, and I had a note here, what do we mean by learning? And I just want to throw it out there. What we mean by learning, it hasn't changed, whether we're talking with adolescents, children, or adults. In order to determine if the parties have effectively learned something, it's going to create a behavioral change. Behavior is going to change in one way or another. And so that being said, I'd like to go on and talk about 4 tips, because what we're on is Zoom right now, and it seems to be the dominant source right now that everybody's using all across the country.
I agree, because it's affordable.
Pardon me?
Affordable.
It's affordable, and companies are using it. Everybody's communicating with it. So let's talk about a few pointers for Zoom, for just the people that are using it every day. Number one, I have a pointer that says, pay attention to the background. So while I have been in Zoom programs where the background is completely white, or completely black, or completely one color or another, or has windows behind it. So windows behind it with light coming through generally makes you darker, and there's a glare back there. It just does not work effectively.
Yeah, the halo effect is not good.
The halo effect is not good.
No.
So we've got to pay attention to the background, and that's just a matter of giving it a try. Get on your Zoom, move it around. See, I've got some windows over here.
Nice.
But that wouldn't be good if the light were coming through. You've got a nice, simple background there. Sometimes for fun, I'll actually rate the people in my rooms. I'll rate their background for them. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Lee Barrett, you get best background.
That's right. Yeah. You get an award. You get to leave 2 minutes early.
Some people that, well, we'll get to that in a second. Rule number 2, a simple rule, is the dress down a bit, right? There's no need to be in a suit and tie. It's important to dress down a little bit. Simple is better in the Zoom meeting. It gives a better opportunity to create that relationship.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say in respect to that what we want is solid, bold colors. You could have blue, red, white, but probably stay away from the blended wild patterns, right?
Agree.
Now,
Yep.
neither one of us are using a green screen right now or virtual background right now.
Right.
And
why don't you show them? Why don't you show them what that can look like?
a virtual background?
Yeah,
Sure.
do a virtual backgrounds just so that, and do one that is professional, and then do one that's more fun. Do you have that?
So if I was going to do, this is
ours.
This is ours. This is part of our logo, Leadership Trainers International.
Right.
So it's always hard to work with a white one without a green screen behind you, because you can see the breakup.
Absolutely.
And that is that white background. So that's a difficult one to work with. Here's something that I work with sometimes, especially if I'm working with groups in Las Vegas. I have the Las Vegas sign, and this one typically holds up pretty well. Now, all of these virtual backgrounds will hold up pretty well if you've actually got a green screen or a green sheet or something like that behind.
Right. So one of the things about setting up then for people to keep in mind is, if you're going to do this in a designated room, you can get all that stuff prepared. You can get a green sheet, and it just can be fabric, right?
Right.
Be very simple, something very simple. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that big. If it's 8 foot by 10 foot is way big. 6 by 9 will work.
Right.
So, and this is your regular background, which most people are working with just whatever's behind them. So I say to you, if you're using just what's behind you, that's fine. Just make sure the shelves are a little bit neat.
Right.
It doesn't have to be perfect, but it should look like there's some order in your life.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Right.
Yeah.
So dress down, be comfortable, and again, focus on that relationship. Number 3, which you brought up, we've talked about, that's think small. Think small. So if you're on stage and you're used to being flamboyant and out there and all these kind of gestures, which both you and I tend to do in live.
And we walk a lot.
And we walk a lot.
Yeah, because that's how we think.
Sure. And here it's a little different, right? So if we're going to make gestures and we're going to make impactful gestures, then we've got to get small. We've got to get inside the screen like this with our hands or our prop, or if I'm going to use my phone and I'm going to put it on the screen, then I can do all that, but I need to stay small in order to fit into the camera.
Absolutely.
Just common sense there.
Yep.
Although it's not one of the items that I've got covered here, the audio is important. So it's always worthwhile to record yourself or call a friend first, or just double check and make sure that your audio is.
And you know, the difference between you and I always use a headset, and not because I'm deaf, but I speak historically pretty low. And so what the mic does is enables me to project my voice a little bit stronger.
Very good. Very good. And that's something worth checking for anybody, especially if they don't speak loud.
Absolutely. And you know what? There's a lot of these. This happens to be a logistics, and this is attaches to the USB, and it's like $25. So anybody that's going to do this, you know, I've got another one that goes right into the mic section. If you're going to do this, you know, go ahead and figure out what makes you feel comfortable. I don't have a problem with headsets, since I don't have any hair to mess up.
Right. So I have a little shine on my forehead right there too. So that's because my forehead is getting bigger.
Yeah. Well, that happens.
Sure.
I'm older than you, so.
So the last of the 4 points that I wanted to talk about was working the room. So so understand, working the room is a little different since we're on camera. I don't know how many times I've seen people put the camera too low. So the camera ought to be about eye level, right there. If the camera is at nose level, then you're gonna can have people looking up your nose.
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't want that.
So
so you know, it goes back to the fundamentals. You know, when our clients that are national instructors and local instructors in different markets, they come to us and they say, well, do I go set up the room before I'm there? And you and I know, because we've traveled around the world, and you get to a facility and you walk in, and the lights are bright at the end where you're going to do your presentation. You and I have both talked about having somebody come in from staff and take those lights out, because we want our presentation to be done in the best light.
Sure.
And so this is the same thing with this. You need to know what you need to know, and go back to the skill sets you have already, and say, how could I interpret those and put those into this kind of presentation?
Right. How do I implement it into video?
Absolutely.
And that's right. So just as you're saying, the instructor always has responsibility for the facility and the room and how it lays out. And
JC, you're absolutely, and we still have the responsibility of owning the room. And a lot of people that, a lot of our clients sometimes are not public speakers, they're business leaders. And we say to them, by the way, you got to own the room. And they say, well, I own the room anyway. These are all my employees. And we say, no, you need to own the room. You need to walk in with that confidence. And it's the same thing with this medium. You got to have that confidence where people go, oh my gosh,
right.
They are in control of this. They are protecting me from knowing what I don't know that I need to know that I need to know.
Right.
That's
right. Yeah. That's right. So it is a matter of taking control and getting comfortable with it. And so for those that might be watching this that are new to Zoom, there is a little bit of a learning curve. It's not much actually, but there's a little bit of a learning curve, and get yourself through it as quickly as possible so that you feel more comfortable in this environment. I would say that.
Absolutely.
And
JC, people just can practice like we do. I mean, we're professionals. We practice and we let each other know what we're doing right or wrong. I mean, if you have a friend that has Zoom, call each other and start to practice.
Sure. That's it. That's the name of the game. Hey, I want to leave. Thanks for taking the time out today to have this discussion with me. I really appreciate it. And I know it'll answer some questions for some folks that were asking. I have one thought that I want to share from a friend of mine by the name of Tim Marvel. Tim is a member of the National Speakers Association, and he's a writer and author, and he's written a couple of books. And I caught something of his in a current magazine from NSA, National Speakers Association, and I wrote it down, and he says it's a success pointer. And with COVID-19 and things just starting to open up and us having been locked down and all of this other stuff, he says to make success more obtainable, ask the question, what could you do for 5 minutes a day? A year from now, you'd be glad you did.
Oh, wow.
Right?
That's brilliant.
And then he goes on to say, success doesn't require all your time, just a consistent use of your time. So, I thought that was that tied right into what we're doing, because speakers and public speakers and trainers and facilitators and leaders that are running job sites or corporations or management teams, we've got to effectively communicate, and we've got to put the time in consistently on whatever it is that we want to get better at.
Amen. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And what a great quote. It's as little. I remember when I wanted to start reading again at a higher level, and I made a commitment to do 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night. And now from 15 minutes, I've gone to an hour in the morning and an hour at night. And it's just forming those good habits.
Sure. It's all about habits. It's all about it. Yep. Hey, listen, Lee, thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. Leadership Trainers International loves you and appreciates you and everything that you do for the company. And you have a great day, okay?
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Bye.
Bye-bye.